Hey guys, welcome back to another video. This is part two of how I built the farm, and the last video was very much about doing your research, doing your homework, and then taking the risk and basically build it and they will come. So it's really important to remember that everything is in the context, so what I've done, this is very much of not a how-to but how I done it, and everything is specific to my context. So if you're looking at this, and this is how I looked at other farms, you don't really look at the nuts and bolts. It's more the principles, and then you've got to think about how could I apply that in my situation, or how would that relate to my situation. And that's really the key in a lot of the success I got from the people that I looked at or looked up to or got mentorship from, was just taking their principles and then trying to apply that in my context, not taking the how they do this, how they do that, the ABCs. Because a lot of the time, if you delve down into it, the reason why they do their A, their B and their C is very specific to their context. So there's no point in me applying that here on my farm. I got to figure out how the principle can be applied in my farm, and that'll give me my A, B and C. And so the kind of theme of this video is definitely going to be don't listen to the naysayers. That's a big thing in life. I think if you're watching this, if you're 9 or 90, at some point in your life, we live in a very negative time and space. And I remember a long time ago listening to an interview by Arnold Schwarzenegger, and I don't know why, but it just stuck with me. He always says, and because I guess he repeated it a lot of times, that don't listen to the naysayers. And that's always playing in the back of my head. When you try to do something different, when you try to do something out of the norm, you're going to get a lot of negativity. Don't listen to it. If you've got a goal, if you've got a dream, go for it. You mightn't make it. That's okay. If we fall down, the only important thing is that we get back up again. So don't listen to the naysayers. So when we moved to the farm, it was really a blank canvas. There was 3 main pastures and next to no infrastructure there. There was sheep fencing around the farm, but it was mediocre fencing. There was one water point on the farm, and I had no electricity. This was at the end of the summer, so these pastures, like the pastures, were pretty degraded. This should be lush green grass right now, but as you can see, it's been overgrazed and understocked probably for years. So there was a lot of moss, and first thing we had to do was get some infrastructure in. And we got to the farm in September, and it was going to get wet pretty quick, so we didn't have much time to get a road in, and roads are expensive infrastructure. All in all, I think I've put about 500 ton of stone into the road, which is about 5,000 euros at the time, probably closer to 7,500 euros now. But we stripped off a road. I decided I was going to make a little farmyard or centre in between the 2 main paddocks. So we dug out a road, then we laid down some membrane, and we put in, that's 4 to 6 inch wash stone. Now you could get stone for taking away, hardcore stone, but I was kind of under time pressure. We need to get the road in, so we bought our stone from a quarry to get this done, and then we just blinded it over with gravel. I was pretty lucky. My brother-in-law, who lives on the farm, is a really good machine operator, and his brother was there too, so they helped put in the road. And yeah, this stuff you don't anticipate it, but I was spending big money now. I think all in all, I spent I invested over the next this year here, which was the year 2000, 2001, and into 2002, I invested probably about 60,000 euros into the farming infrastructure. Once we got our road made up, we made a little square because I had got 2 shipping containers, and I was going to use them as our base to work out of. And we were really lucky here with the weather. We got it all in, and it actually looked really nice. We got our gate in, got everything looking good. Our turkeys were up, and our laying hens were up at the farm at this stage. And before this point, all I was working out of was a Jeep. And even at this point, I had no electricity here. I didn't get electricity for from this point here. It was another 6 months almost before I got electricity. So everything was done with a head torch. We were going into winter. and that was pretty wet, that bit in the left, and that stayed wet right in for about 6 months before it dried out. It's heavy clay ground, and the water just either runs off the top, it doesn't soak in. This place in the left, we leveled this out because I wanted to put a polytunnel there. At the minute, I was trying to focus on maybe getting a small polytunnel in. I wanted to put it in there, but it's just too wet, so I had to look for somewhere else on the farm. That white container there really it was my workshop, my storage area. I put another blue container in beside it, and that was for my grain store. And that was my base of operations. And it's, I mean, when I look back now, it was a tough start. No electricity. We had one water point in the field, so I had to get my water lines established. I had to get a polytunnel up to get somewhere for the laying hens to go for the winter. So I bought this. This is a 12 meter by 4 meter polytunnel. It cost me, I think, €900 at the time. And it was the best money I ever spent. This was the only place in the farm that I could really put it that was dry enough. And my plan was to move it. I still haven't moved it. I'm hopefully going to do that this spring. But I mean, this tunnel has had everything in it over the years. It owes me nothing. And you can see out in the background there, that's where our layers. And I was in, my dad had an old Jeep that he wasn't using, and me and my uncle got it going again. And I used that for a little while to move the eggmobile around. But I knew I had to come up with a different solution because the Jeep was unreliable. Half the time I needed it wouldn't start. Then I got my little tunnel sorted, and we got our chickens in for the winter time. And that was kind of a sigh of relief because I had somewhere for the chickens to be safe, and I had that other little white container where I could kind of work out of as a little workshop, a little whatever it needed to be. That's what it was. And we're heading further into the winter, so it was time. I was upscaling everything, so I started to build another eggmobile. I was tripling my outputs almost in everything: layers, broilers, turkeys. I was going for it. And so I built this eggmobile. But one of the problems I was going to have too is in the summer, spring, summer, I was going to have two eggmobiles to work on my own. So that's where I developed and came up with the whole automated eggmobile. That winter I looked around to see if I could find one anywhere, and I couldn't, so I developed my own, and I offer a training on that. And then, yes, there's probably €5,000 worth of trees there, and they're fruit trees and windbreaks. And I made the decision early on that I was going to invest. I had money to invest in trees, production, fruit, nut, and windbreak, and so I made the decision early on I was going to invest the money in that so they'd be there. Now, up to this point, I had rented this land from my family, and I had pretty much I had a long-term lease on it, almost a lifetime lease. The way it is my siblings and their partners don't really have any use for the land. Now, maybe their kids in 20 years' time might want to use the land maybe to build a house on or whatever. So I've been investing in everything that's been movable up to this point except for the trees. So the shipping containers, the polytunnel, I could take all them with me if I needed to. I was willing to invest in the trees because I'm happy to leave them behind. I don't believe I own them. The only other thing I was having to think about investing in that would be fixed was a perimeter fence, and I needed to put in a deer-proof perimeter fence. And a perimeter fence is really important. A lot of people don't prioritize it, but I decided that I was going to put it off to the next winter because time was my problem. I had a lot of projects to get done, and I really didn't have the time. So I took a big risk. There was a sheep fence all the way around, and I went along and put some electric wires on top of the sheep fence and hoped that would keep the deers at bay. And thankfully it did, and it meant I could push off investing in a perimeter fence, investing the time and the money until the next winter. And so it freed up some money that I could invest in these trees. And I put them in the spring. There was a lot of digging, and we put in those windbreak. The willows we're really close to the ocean, so we got a lot of wind, and I needed to get a windbreak established. You can see there from the top our windbreaks, and then that's our fruit and nut trees, and they're planted in a keyline pattern. Now I have another video on YouTube that shows how I find that, so if anyone wants to see that. But we got them put in. and that was a lot of work in the springtime. And Neve was helping me whenever she could, and I was getting help from anyone I could get roped in, basically. Then I found this. This was a polytunnel I found on an app we have here, Dundee, and cost me €1,200. And I basically, me and my dad went there and we dismantled it. We took every single thing with us, and we basically took it back to the farm and put it up pretty much exactly how we bought it. So you can see this is further in this late spring, almost summer. So this area is dried out, and we got in our poles. Actually, my brother-in-law helped me. He concreted in all those poles. I dug the holes and he concreted them in while I was building broiler pens. And we got them all in. We put in French ditches to take the water away. And you can see I covered the containers with green tarps. That was just to make them blend in better. I don't like any eyesores. I want these things to look as natural as possible. Then one day, my two brothers-in-law and myself, we went at it and we put up all the hoops, and then we put on the plastic. And well, we put up all the steel first, then I went and done all the timber work, and then I got the guys back again and we put the plastic on it. And it's great to have family and friends around to help out with those kinds of jobs, because something like putting on the plastic, you need lots of hands. I was having long days, and I wasn't living at the farm either. I was living about 5 miles away, so I was putting in big days. I was running 2 egg mobiles now. Brooder. I was actually brooding them in brooding the chicks in a cattle trailer, because I wanted to set up my brooder in the polytunnel, but obviously it wasn't ready yet. So I was tending to the farm, doing all the chores, and then in all my spare time I was working on these projects, trying to get all this infrastructure built in. And again, to me, this polytunnel is only a temporary infrastructure, because we could take that down in 4 hours if we needed to and move it on. But looking back now, it was a lot of work, a lot of manual work as well, because I didn't have too much equipment. Once we got the tunnel up, that was a big relief, because I actually had a space to work. If it was raining, I could work inside. Up to this point, if I was working on anything, I was working outside in the rain. I had my little white container, but I couldn't really fit anything in there. So this was a big day for me, getting this thing on the farm. And it also meant we could start growing some vegetables for ourselves. But it was a massive covered space that was dry. And yeah, and that tunnel still, like, it doesn't owe me anything. We because now I have a lot more hens. They were going to have to overwinter in here as well. And you can see now the farm was starting to come together. There was a lot of work gone in. This is probably in nearly the middle of the summer. Well, just early summer. You can see the trailer's actually still there where I was brooding my chicks. We had 2 egg mobiles going, and things were starting to take off. I bought in lambs in the spring. We were doing our planned grazing with them. I think I had 12 lambs that year, and I think we done 8 pigs, and just scaled everything up to proper scale that we could start making some money. And yeah, looking back, it was a lot of tree planting that year, in a wet spring. But I got there. I planted all that year on my own. The next year I got some help, but that year I planted everything on my own. One of the things I had to come up with then was I had no reliable way of moving my egg mobiles. I had no tractor. My dad's old Jeep was just a pain in the bum. So I came up with this concept of moving it with a winch and doing it solar powered. That was my dad's quad. I used to got the lend of it. He didn't use it in the wintertime because his sheep was in, but he would use it in the summertime. So that actually went away, and I was using a wheelbarrow after that. But I got that system dialed in. But at this point now, we were starting to have a lot of produce to sell, and was a good thing because it meant money was coming in, more steady and reliable money. But I was working hard building up my customer base. I was doing a lot of drop-off points. I'm meeting a lot of my customers, talking to them, put a lot of time into that, a lot of effort to build my customer base, to tell them, explain to them what I was doing, and it all paid off in the end. It was hard work. And that was pretty much it for the season of 2020. It was about scaling up and getting established on the farm, getting the base set up, and then to try and build it from there. It was a lot of manual labor that year, because I had limited funds, and I was investing them in things that were going to either return fast, and when I say fast, I mean within a year, or that were movable. And Yeah, I easily invested €30,000 that year into the farm and infrastructure. Roads are expensive, and we came back in then the next year and done more development on the roads. Our water system, I put a water system in all around the farm that year, and yeah, all in all, it was a really good year. This was the first year of COVID as well, so that added an extra dimension to it. Um, but I remember that spring was really good weather, and it was a really, yeah, it was a really fun time for me doing all this stuff on the farm and working really hard and building up the farm. I look back with fond memories on it now. That's going to be it for this video, guys. As I said, the main message in this video is don't listen to the naysayers. Just go for it, and no matter what it is you're trying to do, give it a go. And if you fall down, just get back up again.